It's the same thing over and over. Within the last 20 years, I've been subject to the one routine that has become the bane of my existence. You write a book, it becomes popular and gets turned into a series. You keep writing more books, and the public seems to show no signs of disinterest. You eventually write what you believe is to be the last novel of your entire career. Your audience loves it and wants to see another series. Rinse and repeat until you end up like me. If I had to go back and decide whether I should become an author, I wouldn't take it. I wasn't always this pessimistic. Ever since I was a kid, I loved to read anything that I could get my hands on. It didn't matter whether it was Dr. Seuss, Mad Magazine, Ancient Egypt, or Shakespeare. If it looked mildly interesting, I would dive right in. It wasn't until I was 12 years old that I knew that I wanted to become an author. I was fascinated by Stephen King's works, namely It and The Shining. The fear of the supernatural and the psychological impacts intrigued me. These tropes would serve as inspiration for my works. I try to avoid the usual cliches, such as the main character splitting up, having the antagonist be unkillable, and so on. My first few novels were mildly successful. I was only well known in the local papers at the time. However, it wasn't until I borrowed sci-fi elements that I became very popular. The first book to use such elements was a sci-fi thriller titled The Watch of Salem. It was about a local scientist named Roy O'Reilly who found a crystal from a meteor that crashed and used it for a watch back in time travel. The legend goes that every 330 years, a meteor will crash into the same spot that O'Reilly found the crystal. When O'Reilly attempted to set a date on the watch, the date got glitched to 2 weeks before the meteor crash, and the crystal inside the watch broke. To his horror, O'Reilly finds out that he has been sent back to the Salem witch trials and must survive for 2 weeks until the meteor comes so he can go back home. The Watch of Salem went on to be a critical and financial success. My book was even rewarded as a New York Times bestseller. But of course, with high success comes high demand. As soon as major outlets gave the book positive reviews, the public wanted more stories with Roy O'Reilly. I just wished I had bowed out after I had published it. I was young, dumb, and naive, and wanted to make it big, so I kept writing. It seemed that no matter how much I made it clear in my writing that I wanted to move on from O'Reilly's adventures, people still demanded more sequels. Finally, I had had enough and decided to kill O'Reilly off in what would be my 10th book for the series. After I was finished with Roy O'Reilly, I went back to my roots in writing traditional horror stories in the hope that the public would lose interest. But I was wrong. They wanted more stories. More stories meant more hours sitting behind a desk, brainstorming, writing, and eventually typing. One day it hit me. The last book I would ever write needed to have every cliché imaginable. It needed to be dumber, more insulting. It needed more characters making bad decisions, in which they would all die in the end. Of course. John, how couldn't you have seen it sooner? All those hours spent over a desk and all you needed was some cliches. Why didn't you listen sooner? I gave the book cliches. I was going to give the people exactly what they deserved.
In other news, Johnathan Witherspoon's most recent novel, The Divine Carnage, has become one of the highest-selling works of fiction of all time, with over 100 million copies sold in the last 24 hours.
That's right, Tucker. We'll now go live with our correspondent Susan to hear the latest feedback about Witherspoon's work. Susan?
Hi Jillian, I'm standing outside this Barnes & Noble with a satisfied reader of The Divine Carnage. So tell me, what do you like about the book?
You know, I love a good horror story, but before I read it, I thought it was going to be a generic story. The main characters survive the villain's traps. and somehow defeats him in the end. But as I was reading it, I realized that this was no generic story. This is a story that is not afraid to take big risks.
What?
The Divine Carnage.
What do you mean you love it? It's shit. It's garbage. You're not supposed to love it. You're supposed to hate it. It's got every cliche known to mankind.
Ultimately results in the downfall. If all the characters managed to survive in the end, then it wouldn't make for a compelling story.
Oh, I'm never going to be able to retire from this.
Not every element has to be perfect. So as long as there are exciting conflicts with a satisfying ending, then that is enough to make this a good story.
Agreed. Back to you, Jillian.